Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our Hands on the Land mini grant webinar. We're going to wait about another minute or two before we start the webinar, so we'll check back in with you soon. All right. Hello and welcome to the Hands on the Land webinar for the 2017 mini grant cycle. Very glad you could join us today and looking forward to an interesting presentation. Maybe not exciting, but an interesting presentation. Please feel free to jump in with any questions in the chat box as we get going. And a couple other pieces of housekeeping. Also joining me today is Maria Parisi from Fish and Wildlife, and she'll introduce herself a little bit further in a moment. And just a couple other pieces of housekeeping as well. Please mute your line if you're not talking, either on your computer or on your phone, and I believe you can press *6 to mute so we don't have too much background information. If for some reason you do get another call, please just hang up and re-log back in. Do not put us on hold. We don't want to hear whatever hold music your phone has. And please feel free, as we're participating in the call, in the webinar, to either raise your hand, type a question in the chat box, or if it's really impressive question, certainly use the audio function on your phone or computer as well. So what I am going to do, we'd like to get an idea of where people are calling in from, what organizations, what agencies. And so as I call your name, if you can unmute really quickly and just say maybe what state you're calling from and what agency or nonprofit you're affiliated with, that would be great. So like I said, I'm just going to go down the list of people that I can see as participants, and see if you can just introduce yourself. That would be great. All right, starting with Danielle Timothy.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Oh, great. Hi, yes, I'm tuning in from Loudoun County, Virginia. I'm a STEAM lab teacher at Sugarland Elementary. So I'm just trying to get more information and see if I can present some opportunities for the grade levels in my school.
Wonderful. Well, it's nice to know that there's some classroom representatives on the call as well. Thank you for joining. All right, HCP, where are you calling from? Okay, moving on. Analia Bertucci. All right. How about call-in user 10? All right, we're going to scoot through a couple of these to try and. Chantel Jimenez?
This is Chantel. I'm calling from San Diego. I'm with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Wonderful. Welcome, Chantel. Debbie Delaney? Looks like you're muted, so.
There. How's that?
Great.
Okay, yes, I'm calling in from Parma, Idaho. I work with the after-school program there with middle schoolers.
Wonderful. Welcome. Derek Baldwin.
Hi, Josh. Hello, everyone. This is Derek Baldwin. I'm with the Bureau of Land Management, and I am the program lead for Hands on the Land. So it's good to have everyone on.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about Derek and then Maria's role as it relates to Partners in Resource Education in a moment as well. Derek, thank you so much for joining us.
Yep.
Also on the line, we have Emily Damon.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm Emily Kamen. I actually work at NEAF along with Josh, and I work in the grants admin department here. So I can help answer anyone's questions about the application process in our online system, and then can also help as folks move through the process if they are to be awarded a grant, everything that goes along with that in our system.
Great, thank you so much, Emily. Gabby Morey. Gabby, how about Jennifer Kettering? Okay. Jessica. Is there Jessica that can tell us where she's from?
Yeah, it's Jessica Lefebvre. I'm with the Living Coast Discovery Center in Chula Vista, California.
Great, welcome. How about Kelly England? Kelly, you're muted, looks like right now. Oh, there you go, unmuted you. All right. How about Lisa? Where are you calling in from?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I am calling from Richmond, Virginia area with the Chesterfield County Parks and Recreation.
Great, thank you so much. Lori Kuhn.
Hi, I'm here also at the Living Coast Discovery Center. We're a partner with Chantel Jimenez and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in San Diego.
Wonderful, thank you, Lori. Megan Allen.
Yes, hi, my name is Megan Allen. I'm a grant writer with Kemper Region Overseas Grant Service in the Kemper region of New York State.
Great, thank you. And then Michelle Whitbeck.
Yes, this is Michelle. I'm with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in Maryland.
Not so far from us here in D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Nadine.
Yes, hi, Nadine Meyer. I'm with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and I'm an assistant manager at Frontenac State Park.
Great, thank you. Nova.
Nova Clark. I'm with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service at Black Bayou Lake National Wildlife Refuge in northern Louisiana.
Very cool. Hopefully far from the flooding.
Yeah, we got our flooding in March, so we're happy to avoid it this time.
No. Paul Boynton. Paul, are you there? All right, let's get on down. Stephanie Stavrakis.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Stavrakis. I work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service out of the Portland Regional Office for Region 1.
Great, welcome. Steve Smith.
Yeah, hi. I'm with the Bureau of Land Management out of Spokane, Washington, outdoor recreation planner, program manager for a Hands on the Land site.
Wonderful. Welcome, Steve. Sue C.
This is Sue Cummings. I'm with the Forest Service at the Washington office.
I know you, Sue. All right, thanks. And Sue is also the pre-member, Partners in Resource Education member. We'll get to that very shortly. Glad that you can join us as well, Sue. And last, we have Tessa Purdy. Tessa, you there? Yeah, so if anybody else has not mentioned their name or their site and would like to, please jump in. If you're feeling shy, you're welcome to just put it in the chat box as well. It just helps us to know what agencies and regions you're calling in from. Make sure we cover information that's pertinent to you.
Good morning. This is Robin Hasselquist. I'm calling from the Tongass National Forest and Nahuna Ranger District in Alaska.
Great. Thanks, Robin.
Yeah, this is Bob Hall. I'm with BLM in Montana, lead interp ranger at Poppy's Pillar National Monument.
This is Josh
Hi.
Amari. I'm in California with the Bureau of Land Management also. We're at our state office and just learning how to support the program.
Wonderful.
Hi, this is Amber Kosky with the Bureau of Land Management Price Field Office. We have 9 Mile Canyon Hole site.
Great, welcome. Thank you. All right, so I think we'll go ahead and get started with the actual presentation. If you're jumping in a little late or if you want to add in any other information, once again, feel free to add it in the chat box. You can either send it to everyone or to me directly. Once again, my name is Josh Falk. One or two other reminders, please mute your phone if you're not talking. And we will be recording this webinar, and we will post it. I believe it'll be in a YouTube format and saved to the HOL website. Be able to put it up there relatively shortly, and if you want to share with anybody else, you'll be able to do that. We'll also put a PDF of the PowerPoint that we're sharing as well, so if that's easier to share, feel free to do that as well.
Should I still do that?
Once again, my name is Josh Falk, and I am the manager for...
Should I ask about that and just see if I can find out?
And as a reminder to mute your phone, to definitely hear some background talking.
People may have to actually turn their speaker.
Yeah, and you might have to either turn your speaker up on your computer or...
Okay, but if it seems like it's not going to be helpful, I'll get it. Awesome. Thanks, ma'am.
All right, I think we'll be recording this for anybody else who wants to be able to share it. So my name is Josh Falk. I work at NEEF, which is the National Environmental Education Foundation, and we're a member of PRE, Partners in Resource Education, which helps coordinate and run Hands on the Land. So Hands on the Land is a national network of outdoor classrooms and agency resources designed to connect students, teachers, families, and volunteers with public lands and waterways. Really, it's focused on getting public land sites to work cooperatively with local schools or school districts. We really want to try and get high-quality education and then sustained education into public land. And that partnership with the school or school district is important. We want to make sure that our education programming we're doing is rooted in the community, rooted in local standards, and relevant to kids that are coming out on public land. One other thing we think is very important about Hands on the Land is it also not only introduces the idea of education sort of while students are learning about it, but then also introduces public land and management issues and resources to students, and potentially introduces the idea of land management and public resource careers as well. So Hands on the Land is managed by Partners in Resource Education, the partnership through NEEF, the National Environmental Education Foundation, and then 5 other federal agencies, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Park Service, U.S. Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, and the NOAA Estuarine Reserve System and Sanctuary System. Several reps, as you heard, from PRE, from Partners in Resource Education, are on the line, including Derek Baldwin from BLM and Sue Cummings from Forest Service. Maria Parisi is here with me on site, and she will actually be participating in this webinar. And so actually I'm going to let her introduce herself a little bit more and talk about the next slide.
Hi, everybody. As Jeff said, this is Maria Parisi. I'm with the Fish and Wildlife Service. I am a member of PRE, and as we did the introductions, you also heard Derek and Sue. They are BLM and Forest Services Hands on the Land coordinators, and I help coordinate Hands on Land across the Fish and Wildlife Service. I'll just touch on some of the benefits to being a Hands on Land site for public land and water sites. The network now has more than 200 public land sites, and the website has their site profiles and other resources that Josh will talk about later. The website also offers Hands on Land sites a safe monitoring and citizen science database or platform that's outside the federal firewall, I've heard especially Park Service talk about they're being able to have students collect data and post them that they never would be able to do on a Park Service site. Hands-on partnerships provide us with a meaningful way to introduce our programs and ourselves to the community. I think we can go to the next slide. We connect with local communities and create support for our networks. And Hands-on really helps us showcase our work, our programs, and helps us get our conservation messages out and raise awareness of the people's land and water resources. So it really helps us achieve our mission. Josh is going to talk now about benefits to teachers.
Yeah, so we really want Hands on the Land to be beneficial not only to the public land sites, but to the educators that are involved as well. And by the educators, I mean the formal classroom educators. As we emphasized earlier, we really want Hands on the Land to be a robust partnership, with partnership underlined and bolded, between classrooms and public land sites. So by participating in Hands on the Land, and we'll get to registration in a moment, but every Hands on the Land site needs to have a school or school district and a public land site, and so that school district is important. But by participating in Hands on the Land, teachers and students have access to a broad array of educational resources, which I'll highlight in a moment. You'll have the ability to participate in hands-on experiences and service learning activities. Some of those include just the field activities that you would get in your local site. But by participating in Hands on the Land, several of our agencies also run summer programs or internships for teachers. And so those are some great resources available through Hands on the Land as well. By participating in Hands on the Land, you get to work with resource professionals, that's resource professionals and educators in the field. And then access to great exchange programs, including data sharing through the Hands on the Land website, not only with other schools throughout the country, but with public land sites as well. There's some real, drilling down some real benefits to being out in the field. Reasons to get involved with a program like Hands on the Land is by being in the field, you have real-world applied thinking and processes that students get to work through. Learning about STEM content, critical decision-making skills, and then really learning some skills that are really important for STEM careers. Research also shows that young people who experience the natural world and have more opportunities to play and learn in the outdoors are more likely to choose science or natural resource careers as well. So really, the way to expose them to those opportunities is to actually get them out in the field learning about what's out there. So Hands on the Land is, at its root, a website, and the website has a huge array of resources. This is a screen grab from one of our educator resource pages, just highlighting some of the things that are available. What's great about the Hands on the Land website, if you haven't used it yet, is that educator research page is very searchable. You can search and filter by agency, by subject, by grade. As you can see, some of these have these sort of keywords that people search to get to them, and then the grades broken out as well. And there's curriculum, lesson plans, activities, all sorts of resources for formal or informal educators. Also, as Maria talked about earlier on, the Hands on the Land website is a great resource for environmental monitoring. This is a screen grab of environmental monitoring program run out of Great Smoky National Park on salamanders. But through the Hands on the Land website, we can create online databases that you can use in the field, back in the classroom, upload while out in the field, and then really with our really great and responsive IT guy, we can even create some online databases that are catered to what you need. Some of these monitoring projects are national, so if you look on the left side of the screen grab here, things like water quality monitoring, terrestrial invertebrate studies, and ozone biomonitoring are things that can be potentially expanded to sort of broad, wide-ranging HOL sites. But some of the other ones, like the salamander monitoring, is ones that we've worked with one of our HOL sites to create specific to that site. So if there's something that you're interested in studying and want some help creating a monitoring program through Hands on the Land, we can help you create that as well. I also encourage you to do a little looking through some of these environmental monitoring pages as well, because there are some really great protocols for things like citizen science as it relates to salamanders or bumblebees or snowpack. Really great resources there as well. How to get involved as a member of Hands on the Land. You need to have one person that's designated as a site manager, and we generally ask that person attached to the agency, the federal agency. One person that's the point person to get all other personnel involved. You need to have that school or school district involved. And then really we don't want Hands on the Land to be a one and done where you come out and do a field trip and then you never involved with the school or the site again. We really want these to be sustained and recurring programs. There are several levels of membership through Hands on the Land. In order to qualify for the grant, because you do need to be an HOL member to qualify for the grant, the full membership is the one that's important to be eligible for an HOL mini grant this year. So generally we ask that that's completed, submitted by the public land representative, and we really want you to highlight in your application not only what you do on the site, but how you are aligning to meet those educational standards, curricular objectives. And then also we want to make sure that what you're doing not only meets the school's needs, but your specific agency or region's needs as well. You're actually, in fact, when you apply, creating a little bit of a website for your site. And so this in some ways is an advertisement as well. So we want to make sure that you're talking about your programming in your site in the best possible light. This is once again another screen grab from our website, things that are available and benefits by registering for HOL. I'll let you read through that, but the bottom one here, the eligibility to apply for HOL grant funds, is why you guys are all here, and that's a big one. And you do need to be a member in HOL to qualify for the grant. Try to make the registration as relatively simple as possible. In order to register, you need to make sure that you're eligible, so review the membership benefits and requirements. You need to actually subscribe, and by doing that, you're setting up a username and a password. And even as a base subscriber, you'll get access to the newsletter, so you know what's going on with HOL. After you receive that password, you'll then log in and complete the field site application, which may take a little bit as you work with your partners to get all the pertinent information in. Once you submit your application, that application will need to be approved by the pre-member, So for specific federal agencies that participate in PRE, it will be that pre-member, that agency rep. If you're a non-federal site, it will be me that approves your application. And approval is a collaborative process. If there's, as the agency reps look through your application, we just want to make sure that the information you're putting out is consistent, it's connected to what the HOL priorities are, and we'll work with you to answer any questions that we may come up. And once we approve it, the site will go live.
Alrighty, so I'll touch on this best practices piece as we wrap up kind of this HOL overview before we go on to kind of the nitty-gritty of the grant process. So we've got a slide here on best practices for successful programs. I'll start with the last one. We build our community partners through our education programs and that broad base of support in the community. And the best programs really have sustained programs through their local schools, and they engage friends groups or other partners in education programs. One of the things we've found is the more partners a site has, the more robust they are in their ability to be flexible and adapt. So if you have one partner that can do one thing, you might have another partner that can step in and do something else. So it helps support your program. Then, I know we're hearing somebody talking. If everybody could be sure they're muting, it might mean turning off the speaker on your computer.
Yeah, I just want to make sure somebody didn't have a question either. And this is a good place to stop. And as we start to transition to the mini grant focused portion of the webinar, are there any questions about what Hands on the Land is, how to get involved? And I will say, we were relatively brief on some of the key parts of Hands on the Land. We wanted to spend most of our time focused on the grants, but certainly feel free to either in the chat box or live right now ask any questions.
I had a question.
Sure, go ahead. Just introduce yourself so I know who we're talking to.
Yeah, sorry, this is Darielle Timothy calling from Loudoun County, Virginia. And so I had mentioned before, I'm a STEAM teacher. So I guess to help me understand this, I guess as you mentioned, being able to access the grant, you need to be a member. I just want to make sure I understand correctly. Since I'm like representing a school organization, am I supposed to have a partnership with one of the other 5 federal organizations in order to be a member?
That's a great question, Darielle. Thank you very much for asking it. So you need to be a partner with a public land site.
Okay.
It does not necessarily have to be one of those 5 pre-agencies. And that's actually relatively new for Hands on the Land. We are expanding out to other federal and non-federal public land sites. But the real goal of Hands on the Land is connecting that sort of formal aspect of classroom education to public land. So we do want to be a Hands on the Land site, you do need to have some sort of public land partner. And that's something, if you're not sure who to reach out to, I would encourage you, once the webinar is done, to send me a private message to my email, and I'll pop up my email address a little later, and I can potentially help you, put you in contact with some local sites. You're in Loudoun County, so there are definitely plenty of public land sites nearby, and actually there might be a couple of fish and wildlife sites we can put you in touch with that are close enough by as well. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, I guess then my next concern would be, because I feel like I have very little turnaround time, because I believe the grants are due in like 2 days. So
NEAF does offer a variety of grants, and you may be confusing that with one of our other grants that we offer. This grant is not due, the grant process doesn't close until October 13th.
Oh, okay. Oh, so it's the grant that you're referring to is specifically through NEAF, not the Hands on the Land grant?
So Hands on the Land is a partnership, a program that's run with those 5 federal agencies and NEAF. NEAF manages not only those meetings that pre-runs, but a lot of the sort of nuts and bolts of Hands on the Land, and then we also have the capacity to offer grants. And so the grants are offered by NEAF, but for Hands on the Land.
Okay.
That's another good question. So, yeah, so the grant site, and we'll get to that in a moment, is run by NEAF, but it is for Hands on the Land sites and programs.
Okay. I'll probably just email you to get more specific information then. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Any other questions while we're taking a break here?
Okay.
All right.
Josh, this is Steve in Spokane. Could I sneak in one quick question?
Sure, go ahead, Steve. Thank you.
Yeah, Spokane BLM. I'm existing site program manager, Hands on the Land, with an educational partner. group that does outdoor education and is part of a school district and then brings in a different school district, 4th and 5th graders in for interactive educational programs, field trips on public land. And I guess I'm curious in this current slide about that more robust programs actually engage friends groups in education programs. So I'm curious if a program such as mine typically does engage other organizations, either NGOs or maybe governmental agencies, this kind of thing, in addition to a school district type of program that's fairly established, or if I might be overreaching, growing too much to competently bring the continued good results. I'm kind of curious about that engaging friends part of the quotient here.
Yeah, so a lot of times, a lot of the reasons we involve friends groups is because the dollars that are coming from these grants are federal dollars, and federal dollars can't go directly to federal dollars, to the federal sites. And so friends groups a lot of times serve as fiscal agents for the park sites to or public land site to actually be able to receive grant funding. You know, I think it sounds like your question is very specific to your site, but I would say, and if you're a BLM site, you know, maybe you, Derek, and I can get on a call a little bit later. The more community organizations you bring into the grant, the more sustainable and robust it will be. So that doesn't sound like a bad thing to me. It sounds like you're building that sort of community that we're looking for high-quality HOL sites.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Great. Like I said, you know, shoot me an email after the webinar, and maybe you, Derek, who's the BLM representative, and I can get on a call and talk a little bit more about what you're looking at and get you some more information about BLM and HOL.
Will do.
And I have another question from Paul Boynton. And Paul, your question about your local education center, once again, this is sort of a specific question. I think we'll have to actually get online and talk about whether that would qualify as well for a specific HOL site. So thank you for that question about whether you could partner with a local education center as opposed to a specific school or school district. So I'm going to move on. I have a couple other questions in the chat box, which I'm not going to ignore, but I want to move on with the grants questions, and then I'll come back to there's at least one question right now from Jennifer, and I'll answer a couple other ones as well towards the end of the webinar, because I want to move on with the grant aspect of it. But thank you guys for being so engaged. All right. So.
Okay. So we'll go ahead into the mini grant overview and just also note that I can help watch the chat box. So some of you are writing questions directly to Josh as the host and presenter. If you post to everyone, I can also see and help make sure we address all these questions. But we'll get going on the grant piece. So I'll just touch on kind of the goals and priorities of the grant and the funds. It's really important that we see these proposals come in where folks are documenting and demonstrating that you're enhancing curriculum-based student learning in these natural public settings. Curriculum-based, of course, you won't get your teachers engaged if it's not serving their purpose. So a lot of sites have some kind of partnership with a school or school district where they are either customizing or connecting learning that meets the educator's needs. It's also an opportunity to take environmental education and science literacy and applying all these things. Josh touched on that earlier as kind of one of the benefits to teachers. But we're looking for the grants to help expand learning in these ways you have on your screen. We also will want to see that we're really expanding and leveraging our resources. The public land resources, you know, all the HOL sites are really locally resourced. You know, what are the appropriate partners? Who are the additional partners you can bring to the table? So as we noticed earlier, we use the word robust, but a lot of these programs that have kind of your support system nicely built around you, this is kind of also a benefit. You're both creating this environment, and then that's a benefit to you and the sustainability of your program. So those are some priorities for the grant funds, and Josh is going to carry us through the rest of the details about the grant process.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in about, just reiterate what Maria said about the local networks. HOL really tries to be sort of the best of both worlds, helping you grow both local networks and strengthen those local network ties, and then connecting you to that broad national network of sites and resources as well. So really it's trying to enhance communities on two levels. So getting back into the grant, we have a total of $90,000 to be awarded as you read through the RFP. Some of it comes from the Environmental Protection Agency, and some of it actually is coming directly from NEAF. These mini grants may range from as little as $500 to $5,000. And just as a side note as well, we may not award full funding to all applicants depending on our pool of applicants. Last year we were very competitive. We were only able to award about, I believe, a third of our applicants. We anticipate something similar this year. Though we do have a little bit more than last year, a little bit more money than last year as well. We have about $15,000 more than last year. So to be eligible for these grants, they're open to those partnerships between schools and federal and non-federal public land and waterway sites that are members of HOL. You may apply for the grant if you are not currently approved as an HOL site. So in order to actually get your grant, we need to make sure that you are approved. So you know, if you start to run into trouble about getting your application for HOL in as you're working through your grant application, and there will be some overlap for sure, please let us know, please let me know so we can make sure that your grant application doesn't get ignored. Just to be clear as well, like I mentioned before, if the applicant is a federal site, we will be awarding the grant funds to a non-federal partner because the bulk of this money comes from the federal site, federal dollars. And that partner can be the school, the friend site, or other partner group, and you'll just need a strong letter of collaboration, and the requirements will be in the application process, what you actually need in that letter. So as far as funding guidelines, what we're really looking for to cover in our grants is the great thing about the HOL grant is that once you're an HOL member, we want to make sure that you have a successful program. We really fund, through this grant, a wide range of programming, whether it's curriculum or material development, whether it's program supplies, professional development, transportation. These programs funds can be used for things like to fulfill Every Kid in the Park. We have a line for non-federal staff time. I will put a sort of an asterisk in there as well that if you are asking specifically for staffing, we want you to really, really explain well why we're paying for staffing, and then how, we talked about sustainability before, how that helps make your program more sustainable in the long run. And by sustainable, we don't necessarily mean environmentally sustainable, that's important, but what we're really looking for is that long-term viability of your project. How are you going to make it happen from year to year? Other things that we really want to focus on are that place-based piece. How is the program you're doing really focused on the specific place, one of the key assets of the public land? Using those public lands as living laboratories, really, how are you doing research? What are you doing? What work are you doing on the site? Tied into environmental monitoring and citizen science as well. And this year, as with last year, we're going to be looking a lot at trying to expand our ability to do environmental monitoring and citizen science. So projects that do that will be very highly received as well. I jump ahead. So looking at how we will review grants, I'll also add that through the RFP there's a link to the rubric on how the grant will be scored, so you will have access to that. Really quickly, just going to run through these because I think they're pretty straightforward. How are you collaborating, public land and school? How are the two sites collaborating? What's the nature and scope and reach of the project? You know, because we're tied in to specific agencies, whether they're federal or non-federal, how are you bettering your specific agency? We do want to know some numbers. What are the outcomes? What are the impact of your grant? How many students? What impact are they getting if it's a small number of students? You know, what are the long-term impacts of what the programming they're getting is? We talk about sustainability. What's the plan for the your program to stay involved with Hands on the Land and your project to stay involved, stay running after the grant period is over? And then how reasonable your budget is and overall quality of the application in general. The grant timeline is as follows. Grants opened last week, or a little bit more than that, a week and a half ago. They're due, as I said before, October 13th. So you have about a month and a half still. We will announce our grantees in early November, and then you'll have from when you receive your grant in early November through July, the end of July, and then the final report we will do a month later. I apologize, my screen just all of a sudden. There we go. Applications must be submitted through NEAF's online grant management system. The website's here, and Emily's going to pop that up in the chat box to everybody in a moment, so you can just cut and paste that if need be. That link is also on the NEAF website, on the HOL website, and if you received a direct email from somebody, it'll be in there as well. So I'm not going to leave this up there for too long. Thank you, Emily, for putting that up there. So to be clear, too, this is getting to that question that was asked earlier. NEAF is running the grant for HOL. So the grant application site is a little different than the HOL site. So there are potentially two applications you have to do. One is for the grant, and one is for the to be a member of HOL if you're not already. Thank you for putting that link up there. So to apply, just like HOL, you need to set up a username and password. Once you do that, once your username and password is set up and confirmed, you will head to, you'll log in, and once you log in, it'll ask you for an access code, right here where I've circled. You'll enter in HOL, for Hands on the Land, and hit enter code. From there, you'll hit apply on the left side, and then that will show you that you're at the correct grant page, and you go to the bottom right and hit apply. So that hopefully is pretty straightforward. If you have any questions about, I'm going to pop back to this question page in a second. If you have any questions about the granting process, about Hands on the Land, I wanted to pop up some specific contacts. You can either contact me at jfalk@neafusa.org or grants admin, particularly as it relates to getting access to that grants page, at grantsadmin@neafusa.org. So I'm going to back up to questions. What other questions do we have about the grant process, about logging in, about Hands on the Land? So feel free to enter them in the chat box or ask them live.
So Analia had a question to everybody earlier.
Yes. Analia asked if special districts are considered a government agency, does the government agency to be eligible for membership, or does a federal agency partner apply as the member?
She shared some additional information then in a chat. So she's partnering with a local BLM office for environmental education with the local elementary schools, and they are a state special district. So just want to address that question better.
Yeah, so if you are a federal site that has public lands and you are working with a school district, then you should be eligible for so. I think that answers your question, Analia, and if it doesn't, feel free to shoot me an email directly or ask again in the chat box. Thank you for the question. Got a question from Katrina Beatty asking about number of students involved, impact proposal and appeal. We are not looking for numbers per se as far as when we are analyzing what grants get accepted and which ones don't get funded. But if you are only reaching a small number of students, just talk about why you're reaching a small number of students and really highlight the impact, short-term and long-term, I would say, with that small number of students. Now, they understand these are mini grants. They're not large amounts of funding. So sometimes the scope on some of these projects is going to be smaller. It is. Somebody asked how we can download a copy of this slideshow. I will put a copy of the slideshow when we create a PDF on the Hands on the Land website. And I'll also put it on the NEAFS grants page. So there's two URLs that I popped up before, and I'll make sure to pop them up again. And actually, maybe Emily can put both of those in the chat box as well, so you can cut and paste. And I would say give me about 2 days to get the PowerPoint transferred and the actual presentation transferred to YouTube. So we should be able to get this up there relatively shortly. Multiple school districts apply for funds through one HOL site or one grant for multiple partner schools. You know, I think honestly, depending on how you wrote the grant, either would be eligible. We have not awarded in the past more than one grant per HOL site. There is no place in the RFP that we've said we can't do that, but you'd have to really create a strong case as to why we would be granting one public land site more than one. Darielle Timothy asks how eStore grant is different from the NEAF grants that are offered, and I'm actually not familiar with the eStore grants. Maria, do you know what the eStore grants are?
No.
So I don't know what those are either. I apologize, Darielle.
There's also a question about the time frame for the mini grant.
Yeah, so I'll go back to.
And would you reapply each year to make it a sustained program?
So I can go back to the timeline, and the time period, the grant period, is from early November to the end of July. So that's the time period for when you could actually use the funds. And we have had this grant now for 3 years in a row, but the funding is never guaranteed. This funding is never guaranteed through EPA. So I think counting on this funding every year is probably not a great way to make it sustained. I think in the grant you could say we are hoping for funds from HOL through this funding cycle. We're constantly looking for other funding cycles, NEAF is, and so there may be other grant opportunities through HOL. But I would talk about how you're maybe leveraging local partners, getting maybe in-kind donations, things like that, to make up differences where you couldn't necessarily get HOL funds next year. I see Emily popped up the HOL website and the NEAF grants site as well. Another question from Carolyn about multiple districts as well. So Carolyn, I think probably what makes sense, since you have a very specific question, is to just reach out to me after the webinar. We can see what the best answer to your question is as far as multiple sites versus multiple grants. Are there any other questions? The one other piece of information I want to put up here that we skipped through before is if you're a federal agency, I wanted to make sure you had the contact information and name of your pre/HOL representative. They're here on this. I'll leave this page up for a second, so if you need to write it down, you can. Okay. So this last slide I will play in a moment, and it's a short video of a specific HOL project that we did with National Park Service and the Bureau of Indian Education and Department of Ed, actually, so with after-school programming. I would encourage you to sit around and sit down and listen to the video, because I think it's a very compelling video. They tell us great stories about what HOL can do. We did want to put it at the end of the slideshow so that if you are busy and need to move on to your next meeting, you can move on as well. I will leave the chat box open while it's playing, so if you have any other questions, please shoot me a direct question via the chat box. For Maria and I want to say thank you for participating in today's webinar. Hopefully it was interesting. Certainly feel free to reach out to me with any other questions. Thanks again. Can everybody hear sound from this right now? I don't. No sound.
No. Oh, mine's on mute. Maybe if you have to turn your computer off mute.
Try that again.
Doing citizen science pretty regularly as a technique for about the past 15, and I find it's a really great way to match helping teachers teach what they need to teach, giving the park good information, and making it fun and interesting for the students.
So in this project, we were working with the Gray Hills Academy out on the Navajo Reservation, and it was a great opportunity to connect with one of the tribal schools here in the region. Because the tribes have such deep connections to Grand Canyon through history and through time, it's a great way to connect the youth and also learn something.
They really have seemed to grasp and latch on to this idea that there's real-time science that they can take part in. And so it's been fun just seeing that spark.
Something that they're going to be involved in, and that this is real science, this is hands-on, and this is what scientists do.
We've got anemometers where they measure the wind speed, laser thermometers we can use to measure the temperature in different locations. We've got measuring devices that they utilize to do transects and longitude caves. We also encourage kids to utilize their senses when they're out there. Not all about technology.
The students just feel more engaged because they know we're keeping the data, we're taking it seriously.
So right now we are at Kings Canyon Elementary School on the Hopi Nation, looking at different kinds of plants for determining levels of air pollution and ozone damage.
The carnivore project here at the Donaughton High School was a meeting of the minds between us and the National Park Service. The purpose was to monitor carnivores. We had a team of individuals, including myself and a couple of science teachers, that decided this would be a perfect project for them because it was a hands-on project and provided them an insight into basic research studies of animals.
The program that we'll be doing with the kids here today is called Life in the Extreme. So the big question they're exploring is how can animals and plants survive?
right now it's very important for students to be exposed to science in general, but also exposed to getting outside. Nature is a good thing. We want to learn about our environment and what's around us because ultimately that's what keeps us alive. We need this planet to live.
It's vital that students now are having opportunities to learn how they can help their community. And this particular group of students, we are looking at climate change because their community is right on the ocean. And so we've had opportunities to discuss how maybe the beach is going to respond to a rising sea level. What's going to change if water temperatures rise?
The kids were very engaged. They loved the hands-on part of it. And once they got into learning what the information was about, they were able to talk about it.
It ties in to a lot of the lessons that we've been planning for our after-school program, particularly the science-based, linking and tying it into things that we're already learning about our environment.
Being able to see all the concepts that you learn in the classroom from a textbook, from reading, and actually happening in your life is really important to kind of solidify your own understanding. And a lot of the comments that I hear on this program and other programs are students, hey, this is just like something we read about, or like this is a definition that we already knew, and like pulling on that background knowledge to actually see it happen in real life because we don't live our lives in textbooks, we live them, in reality.
I think you have the type of kid sometimes that doesn't want to connect to science in the classroom. I think by us going out in the community and letting them experience for themselves, the animals, the movements that they take, the type of behavior that animals partake out there, proved to be very valuable for them as well as ourselves.
They took away from the project what kind of questions to ask. I encourage them to be like that in everyday life. Because, that's the biggest skill that we can teach these kids.
Kids who were quiet opened up and were fascinated by what they were finding. Being able to see the look on their face when they found something. What is this? What is this? And they loved it.
Having the kids come up and like hug you afterwards and thank you, and you talk to the counselors, and the counselors are like, I have kids coming up asking, are they coming back? Is the park ranger coming back? When are they coming? It's been like a nice little sweet spot.
There and bringing them to the park, getting them excited, and something to look forward to, and it's something as simple as this that's really important, and just to kind of encourage them more towards the STEM fields, because I think in Indian country we don't have enough Native American representation in the STEM fields.
Bigger picture, we want to get kids to the park. That's really what I'm trying to do. Get kids to the park and connect them. So STEM is a way I can do that. Anytime the kids are actively involved in learning, whether it's their artistic representations that they're doing for us, or they're looking for fossils, or they're looking for plants, that's how we address the STEM. That's a method to connect kids to the work.
I think the value of getting students out into the field to objectively look at the resource is extremely important for creating a generation of future stewards.
In the National Park Service, we talk a lot about preserving and protecting these places for future generations. We need to seriously invest in youth, make sure that they're exposed to parks and that they appreciate these places. That's the most important thing to me. We're not just entertaining tourists, we're reaching out to these kids, and they're going to have the greatest impact long-term on the national parks, and we better get them on our side.
I love being on the ground with the kids, being in the classroom with them, teaching them has just been just so amazing because these kids, they need something in their life. A lot of them come from broken homes. There's a lot of poverty in that area. Just a lot of things that are really striking that community. So knowing that this project has made a difference in those kids' lives has been huge.
All right. Thanks again, everybody, for joining, and please feel free to reach out to me or any of your agency reps with any questions. Thanks so much.